Welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm gonna make a single pie crust, and you can use this for any type of pie, whether savory or sweet. You have seen me making a double recipe for the tomato pie. Today I'm just gonna make a single. I'll need a cup and a half of flour, I have a pinch of salt, 5 tablespoons of cold butter, that's 5, cut up the butter into tiny pieces. Dump it into the flour and work it so each piece gets coated by the flour. Now at this point you can use a fork to even cut them smaller, or a knife. I'm doing a knife today. And as you're cutting it, make sure that the butter gets coated again. And now I'm going to start adding some ice water, a little bit at a time, and then mix it, and it should start clumping up. Oops, you don't want the ice in there. So just a half a tablespoon of sour cream. Mix that in. And at this point, test it to see if you have enough water in it. And the way you do that is squish it, squeeze it. And if it falls apart like this, then you don't have enough water. So keep adding cold water, ice water, and then keep mixing it. And I think at this point it's good. Again, I'll squeeze it together, and I can see that it's gonna hold together now. There's still gonna be dry parts, don't worry about it. As we put this into a cellophane, package it up for the fridge, these all gonna come together. You'll need a big piece of cellophane or a plastic wrap or a plastic bag even will do. Dump your dough. And start wrapping and smashing at the same time. From every side. Just like that. Don't be afraid touching it. It's gonna be okay. It's not gonna melt the butter that quick. So once you have a block like that, then you wrap it up tightly. As tight as you can. And then you put it in the fridge. Look at the big pieces of butter still, right? See you in 15 minutes. So we're ready for the next stage, which is layering our dough. The first 15 minutes while we rested it in the fridge is because we want the butter to harden again, as we handled it a lot, so it was starting to melt sort of. So that was the first stage, but now we're gonna fold it into layers. I'm gonna actually save this wrapper because I'm gonna do another resting period. So we're gonna put down a little bit of flour, not too much. We don't want to put more flour into the dough itself, but we have to have some flour so things are not sticking. And I also like to use a scraper in this process, but you don't have to, you can use a knife. As a matter of fact, I'll just use a knife since everybody has that. Make sure you flour your rolling pin. And initially you can just pound on it. The main thing is right now that you want to stretch it out into a shape. It doesn't matter what shape, square, rectangular, doesn't matter, round even. You want to stretch it out 3 times as big as it was originally, approximately. See how the butter is a little sticky, so you just keep flouring your rolling pin so things don't stick to it. Okay, so let's just say that's 3 times as much as it was. Now you're gonna fold it into thirds. And a little bit of flour again so it doesn't stick. To put some on the dough itself. Don't be afraid, it's not that much, just a sprinkle, right? Again, you're gonna make it stretch again. You can go both ways, doesn't matter which way you go. The whole thing is that we are now layering butter and flour. So I did already a 1 fold, I'm doing another fold. Again, just use your knife to scrape it up from the bench. Pick it up. Again, make sure you have some flour underneath where you're gonna end up with your dough. So we did 2 folds, right? 2/4 of thirds, how many layers do you really have? The first fold gave you 3 layers, and then you did a third of that, 3 of those, so now that's 9 layers technically, right? And the more folds you do, the easier it's gonna get, less sticky. And as I said, you can fold it any shape you want. Like this one is more rectangular, right? So I'm gonna do 4 folds. So I did 3 already. I'm gonna do my final fold. You don't want to go too far because then you're gonna start incorporating the butter into the flour versus layering it. So I'm gonna do this here a little bit. And that's my last fold. I just want to make sure my layers are sticking together. They're not like staying apart, right? And now we're gonna wrap it up again. Nice and tight. And this time, the purpose of resting it in the fridge is twofold. One, again, we want the butter to harden up again because we will be rolling it out and we don't want it to incorporate with the flour. We want to keep the layers intact, and it's gonna rest, so it allows us to roll it out much easier. It's not gonna try to spring back, it's gonna relax. So another 15 minutes. After the second 15-minute rest in the fridge, we're ready to roll the dough out. Again, I'm gonna need some flour on the work surface. And I'm just gonna use a standard size pie pan. So the goal is to make this dough the size of the other edge of my pie pan, and to make it round. Now, because I'm planning to make an apple pie with this and I want to put some lettuce at the top, I'm gonna cut off a little bit for that here and reserve that. Just a little bit, not much. And then I'm just gonna make this into my single pie crust. Start rolling it out. And as you're rolling it out, you want to shape it into a round as much as possible. Now, if you don't get a round shape, it's still good, because whatever you cut off will be used for the lettuce as well on the top. So to make a round, what you want to do is stretch it where it's square, where it's flat or straight, and that will make a round, right? And as you go, you may want to flip it, put a little more flour down if it's sticky, put a little bit more flour on your rolling pin, and just continue with that. Just shape it as much as possible, and the main thing is really just making it an even thickness. You see how it doesn't bounce back because it rested enough? If yours bouncing back and it just doesn't stretch, just put it back into the fridge for a few more minutes. occasionally put some more flour down and keep going until you get the right size, and as I said, make it even. And as you can see, mine is not really round either, it's more square than anything. So just see if it's big enough. And I can feel that it's thicker up here, so I'm going to try to squeeze that side, roll that side. You're not squeezing anything. Okay, let's see. It's still a little small this way, so okay, I think we're good. So you saw me picking up just with my hand, or you can roll it onto the rolling pin, but it should not fall apart, right? So let it gently take the shape of your pie pan. You want it to fall into it because it will shrink, so you don't want it to stretch. You want it to be loose. And now I can cut off the excess by just running a knife across the edge of my pie pan. And again, we're gonna use that up for the topping in this case. Now if you're planning to do just something like a tomato pie, you don't need anything on the top, right? The other thing you can do is you can do a little pattern if you want, by just pinching like this, just to make it fancy. You just pinch and push, or you use a fork to make some patterns on the edge. It's totally optional. You don't have to make any of that. Okay, so this pie crust, now you can either freeze this for next time when you want to make something, or you can bake it if you're especially gonna use some kind of cream filling where you don't bake the filling, or for tomato pie you want to pre-bake it a little bit. But this is essentially ready for baking. However, I recommend that if you're gonna bake it today, to put it back in the fridge and for another 15 minutes or so. Let it solidify the layers of butter, because then it's gonna puff up and be flaky even more. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge until I warm up the oven. And if you're interested in how I'm making the apple pie, come back. But otherwise, this is the end of making a single shell pie crust. I hope you enjoyed it, but again, if you want to see the apple pie being made, come back. So because I'm making the apple pie, I will have a topping for that. And I'm gonna take my leftover dough, pie dough, and I'm gonna knead that gently together into a square. And you may want to again rest this in the fridge again for a little bit, because it is getting soft. But I'm gonna go for it, and what I need to do is stretch this out into about this long, because that's how wide my pie shell is. I want to be able to put the strips across. So what I'm gonna do, because it is getting soft, I'm gonna actually put some flour down both sides and on the rolling pin, roll it up on the rolling pin, and I'm gonna put this into the fridge for a little bit until I make the pie filling, and I have to preheat my oven as well. This is how I'm storing it with the rolling pin. So see you in 15 minutes. For the apple pie filling, I'm gonna use canned apples. I have 2 pints of canned apples from last September. They're kind of brown because they do oxidize just sitting on the shelf. It's light, and we're gonna need some cinnamon, and I am going to put in a little bit of lemon juice and of course sugar, and a little bit of flour to thicken the sauce, because this is going to be very saucy. So a tablespoon of flour, a teaspoon of cinnamon, about a teaspoon. I'm gonna put in probably 5 tablespoons of sugar, a tablespoon of lemon juice. That just gives an extra freshness to the taste. So I'm gonna pour off most of this liquid. I poured off most of the water. I kind of squeezed it a little bit. But that's why I added the flour, so if any liquid remains, it will thicken up. And I'm just gonna now toss it together. And I do see it's a little bit liquidy, right? So I may put a little bit more flour into this. I'm gonna put a little more flour, like another half a tablespoon. I just don't trust it to be thick enough, and that's gonna thicken up when it bakes, not just yet, right? Now obviously if you do this with fresh apples, you may still want to put a little bit of flour in there, because they're gonna let the liquid out as they cook. They do have a lot of water in them. Once the oven is preheated, you can start filling your pie. And because this apple is already cooked, it's already flat. But if you're putting like fresh apples, you want to pile them up because they will turn flat. Now I'm gonna work on my lettuce. Here's my rested dough. Then I want to stretch a little more. And it's okay that it's an oval shape, because you're gonna need the longer one, 2 long ones, and the other one's gonna get shorter and shorter, right? So I'm not worried too much. Make my pie. I need a knife. So depending on how you want to cut your decoration, because this is just decoration, how thick you want them to be, just eyeball it. So we'll put them in one direction. First. Can you guys even see this? No. So I'm putting the these stripes one direction. So don't press it in yet, because what you're gonna do is kind of braid it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm gonna save these cut-offs so I can use those as I run out of material, because I will run out. Start in the middle, and then you have to put it under that, over the other one, under this one, and over the other one. So that's the middle one. The next one is supposed to start from under, right, over, oops. Then you don't have to get this fancy. You could have just put crumbs on the top of it, which is just flour, sugar, and butter crumbed together. And then the last one again on this side, it's gonna start from top, under, and top. Doesn't have to be pretty, as I said, or perfect in any which way. I need a couple more. So using this leftover, I'm gonna just roll that out into a longish piece. Like that. And just need 2 good pieces. This needs to be a little longer. Oops. So again, we're going to start under, over, under, over, and then just continue with that. Under, right? And then this will be the last one. I'm not gonna monkey around too much because it's gonna start melting. So start it over, under, over, under, over. And now you can push it on the side to the pie, of the pie, like this. Not to the pretty side, you know, it's just inside where it will hold. And here's your pie. Now I'm gonna bake this for 45 minutes in 350. The pie is ready to come out of the oven. Always use 2 hands. So look at it bubbling. Obviously this will have to cool off before I can slice it, and you can see that the pie crust has browned a little bit in spots, but if you want it more brown, there are a couple of things you can do. First of all, you can add a tablespoon of sugar into the pie crust itself. That will make it brown more. Or you can also put an egg wash over it, or just wash it with some cream or milk. That will allow it to brown more. So if you're not a fan of the pale crust, do any of those, but I like the way it is. It's gonna taste wonderful and my family will appreciate it. Enjoy and see you next time.